Okay, I'm joined today on the Pod Bible podcast by Matthew and Brendan from Bottoming. Hello, guys. How are you?
Hi, good,
Hello.
thanks.
Yeah, good. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you very much. We've just joined the call. We're recording over the internet, which I've been doing an awful lot of, and you guys are actually together in the same room. This is amazing.
It's magic. Yeah, it's the beauty of living like 15 minutes from each other.
Yeah, it's very good. I was saying beforehand, sometimes you have the difficulty of the different lag between calls, but this is going to be nice and smooth, and we can chat all about your show and find out all about it for people who haven't heard. So, Matthew, I'll direct this to you to start off with. Bottoming, what is it? What is the show about? How did it come about?
Yeah, so we are the LGBTQ mental health podcast. We originally started at the end of 2018. And it actually stemmed from a project Brendan was working on. I'll let him talk a little bit more about that, but he kind of asked me if I wanted to look at doing this, because I'd spoken about mental health a little bit beforehand through a charity walk I'd done. And I thought, I don't think so. And then a couple of months later, we'd started the podcast, and it was like free therapy to us at that point. We did 5 episodes, realised we had no boundaries with ourselves, and we spoke about way too much, way too soon. We took a little break, ended up being over 18 months long, and then we came back at the end of 2019 and kind of have been non-stop since then. So that is it in a nutshell. We speak to different guests from across LGBT charities, organisations, different individuals, and it kind of, I guess, focuses on either a theme or a person's experiences specifically that is part of the community in one way or another, and kind of then combine that with our experiences personally, or about learning new things as well.
Cool. All right, sounds good. So, Brendan, can you tell us a bit more about what you were doing?
Yeah, well, I guess I was in a bit of a rut with work, and I was trying to redirect my energy into something that might heal some of my past experiences, and I decided to write this thing, which was like a 6-part TV show of the same name, Bottoming, and just to kind of poke fun at those darker moments and those darker experiences, the way that me and Matthew would normally do in conversation anyway. And then after that, came up with the idea about the podcast, because initially when I was looking around or kind of wanting to hear more stories similar to my own or related to LGBT mental health, there wasn't anything really out there. So I just thought it'd be a great experience for us to learn more, like Matthew said, but also for us to share our stories and offer a bit of a platform or a safe space to talk about those different things that was missing, really.
I think one important thing to say as well, people either obviously get the pun to begin with, or they're like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. When we say bottoming, we mean it in like the rock bottoming context, but obviously given the way we've dealt with a lot of stuff has been through rude jokes or puns or just laughing at the darkest times, we thought the bottoming pun was quite funny, given that we're both big queers.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first saw your artwork, I was like, "Wow, what's that about? I need to find out more." So I'm really interested in what you were saying, Matthew, about sort of when you first sat down together, you started talking, or you weren't sure about it, and then before you know it, you're just letting everything out. And I think that's definitely something that a lot of podcasters have in common, especially when you're recording, as a lot of us have been, at home or in each other's houses. If you're in a studio, you might be a bit more guarded, but if you're relaxed and you're at home and you're with somebody you're close to, you end up just letting it all out, as you say. Do you have moments where you press stop and then you're suddenly panicked, thinking, oh my God, why did I reveal that?
I think at the start I definitely was, and I think even like listening back to the earlier episodes, I can hear like the caution, maybe, that as I'm trying to like navigate a conversation without saying someone's name or without kind of making anything too personally connected, that it would be, picked up by the person that I'm maybe talking about in that instance. But I think as it's gone on, and maybe the fact that I've gone through 2 separate rounds of therapy and I'm in a third round at the moment, I think that's helped me kind of unlock other stuff as well. So now I'm not actually ashamed or embarrassed or nervous about any of the stuff. There's occasionally, there was one episode earlier this year where it was quite intense for us, but that was more because we hadn't spoken at that depth about our personal experiences for quite a while. Right. But yeah, now I'm kind of like an open book, as long as obviously I don't name, people will say something that is incriminating to someone or myself.
Yeah.
On the mental health side of it, I'm like, we wouldn't be doing this if we were only going to give half of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of over that, which it kind of just was like a snap change as well, which I thought was interesting.
Also, in the early days, we needed quite a big amount of booze to talk about stuff. So Matthew had recently got back from Poland for the first couple of seasons, and we had it was like bison vodka or something like that. So we're just drinking vodka to enable us to have those conversations. And the more, obviously, the time's gone on, the more we're able to articulate the things a bit better and become a bit more comfortable talking about those different things, means that we can just sit down with a cup of tea and it is just kind of like a nice, cozy conversation.
Yeah. Cool. I love that. I love that it's not just, I'll have a beer or a glass of wine to ease ourselves in. Straight on the vodka.
The hard stuff.
Yeah. So again, interesting sort of referencing about mentioning people's names, or, well, one thing that I know some people struggle with the podcast, or sometimes when they're recording, is to remember it isn't a live radio show. Whatever you're doing, you can stop and start again, or if you do mention a name, you can, in the edit, you can bleep it out, or that kind of thing. It's it's something to get used to, the format. So Brendan, tell us about some of the guests that you've had, because I was scrolling through your episode list just before we started recording, and it seems like you've had a real sort of great selection of different people. So any highlights? I'm sure they're all highlights, but any you'd like to mention?
Well, I guess, when we initially thought about doing the series, me and Matthew sat down and we made a big list of all the episodes we were going to do, and it was 18 episodes long before we decided to cut off after 5, and we had obviously our dream guests, and we still have an Excel sheet of our dream guests, and we've ticked off a fair few of those. The first one we had, which I will say is still an amazing one of my favourites, is Garrett Conley, who wrote A Boy Raised, and we approached him before we'd even had any episodes out, so we didn't even know what it sounded like, what kind of the structure was, but he really was really gracious with us with that, and so we had this huge long interview which was completely unedited in the end, which is just this an hour and a half long episode, which I listened back to it and I think it is a really good interview, but now we've become a lot more strict with that edit, so we're learning as we go, but this year it's just completely blown out what we thought the podcast could be in terms of the guests we could have. I mean, we started season 3 with Emanike, who we both love musically, and we've had Lapsley as well, who Matthew's a big fan for years. I think one of my favourites though is the therapist chair, which on it we had 3 separate guests. We had someone from the NHS, someone from the charity sector, and someone who was a private psychologist, and so we kind of talked through the different routes to therapy, and it was a really practical episode, so people could come to the episode and learn about the different routes and just feel a bit more at ease with making the next step to try and get some help. So that for me is like the pinnacle of kind of what we've done. But I think the most fun episode we did was with Rosie Jones, who was just an absolute joy to have. And she was just hilarious the entire time.
I bet. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll have to go and check that episode out. Fantastic. I love that you sort of mess with the format. You don't have a set way of doing things each week, which is cool. So we do get a lot of listeners to the Pod Bible podcast, people who are interested in setting up their own show or like to hear a bit about the behind the scenes or how it works as a truly sort of independent podcast. How do you share the workload? I heard that you've got an Excel spreadsheet. That sounds like a good start. Do you both edit? Does one of you edit? Who books the guests, or is it all a team effort?
It is pretty much a team split effort.
I mean, I will say I don't do any of the editing. The very first season, we both at that time were going to Brendan's house. We'd sit and record for hours, and we'd sit and edit for hours, and it would be like a 7-8 hour process. When we came back for season 2, we were obviously in a lockdown at that point. It was kind of October, November time when we decided in 2019 Sorry,
2020.
2020. So we were remote anyway at that point. Brendan kind of picked up all of the editing because it was easier to like navigate that way, and that's kind of the way it stayed. Very fortunately for me, he's like a superstar at this point. And then I've kind of worked in a few different areas: diversity, inclusion, LGBT sector. So I've got quite a lot of kind of connections and network in that sense. So it's it's a combo in that way that we both do bits of everything except the editing, and then Brendan does all of our design work as well, which is just amazing and gets better every season.
Oh.
Cool. Yeah, sounds like a bit of a dream team. That's perfect. Okay, cool. Well, we'll wrap things up in a moment, but I just wondered, what you've got coming up. Obviously, it's a brand new year. I take it you're planning on carrying on. Any big plans? Anything that you'd love to do? Have you considered live shows? I know it's a bit of a weird time at the moment, but what have you got coming up?
We do have a couple of projects on the go, all in the preliminary stages, but they are kind of outside of just the podcast sphere, which is really exciting, and we didn't really think we'd go into that. One of them is kind of like a live show format, but it's related to something else, so it means there's a different steer.
Nothing signed yet, which is
okay, all right.
But just to continue with the end of season 3, we've had a bit of a break because Matthew's been signed off work, but we're going to be back mid-Jan, which is very exciting.
Cool.
Until hopefully end of Feb.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Hopefully it'll be as exciting as last year. I
Yeah.
think it kind of every single episode release was just bigger than the last for us, and then we managed to get our first sponsorship, which was amazing. And then some of the conversations we've had, as Brendan mentioned, that we don't have confirmation to talk about yet, but once we've kind of got that, I think it's going to be a really exciting year, and hopefully more conversations that we've had as well. I'm just excited to have them.
Brilliant. Cool. Well, as I said, always excited to talk to podcasts who are sort of like truly independent, have set it up as an idea, and then they bring different skill sets to the table. It's not all just about sitting down and having a chat. So exciting to see what you've got coming up this year, and good luck, and thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for
so
having
much.
us. Thank you.